right, good evening everybody, and welcome back to Walks on Wall Street. We'll get started here in just a moment, but for now we'll do the quick audio and visual check. So if you guys could hear us and if we are streaming in 1080p, just go ahead and give a thumbs up in the chat. Also, if you if you refresh your web browser, you should be able to rewind the stream with the DVR. Thank you all for joining. We will get started here in a moment. Alright, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Well, good evening everybody, and welcome back to Walks on Wall Street. Today is Saturday. It is May 11th, 2024. It's about 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are reporting live from Central Park South and 5th Avenue. We are looking directly across the street at one of my favorite buildings. This is the Plaza Hotel. As well as the skinniest residential apartment building in the entire world, Steinway Tower. Now, before we get started and before we begin, I just want to wish everybody a very happy Mother's Day weekend. So for the audience in the United States, tomorrow, which is Sunday, May 12th, 2024, it is Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to everybody, and a big thank you to all of the mothers out there. I think it's very important. I believe mothers are pretty much the foundation and the bedrock of a functioning society. I think we could all agree with that. So happy Mother's Day, everybody. Hopefully you have a wonderful weekend and enjoy it. That's really all I could say. Now, today is Saturday, so it's going to be a little bit light on the financial discussions. For those of you who are new subscribers to Walks on Wall Street, we do these streams every day, but they're a little bit different. Monday through Friday is when we analyze and talk about the main events happening that day in the financial markets. That could be U.S. equities, emerging markets, fixed income, real estate, really whatever. Saturdays are a day off. We kind of try to walk around a new neighborhood. Today we're going to go to the West Village. I think the Village is going to be really awesome tonight. The weather's okay. It's not the best. At least it's not raining, but it's cold. I have my winter jacket on. It's probably like 55 degrees, a little bit windy, so people still should be out in the Village when we go down there. In any event, tomorrow is Sunday, and Sundays are when we do our Markets A Look Ahead stream, where we go day by day, covering all of the major events that'll be happening during the following week on Wall Street. And it's going to be a pretty busy one too. We're going to get some big inflation data out. CPI, the Consumer Price Index, will come out yet again. That is one of the main components or data points that sort of the Federal Reserve takes into consideration as they set monetary policy for the months ahead. Now, the good news is that we're pretty much all the way through earnings season. We do have some notable earnings reports coming up, particularly NVIDIA. But we've gotten through Apple, we've gotten through Microsoft, Amazon, Meta. So all of the big, Alphabet, all those big tech companies have pretty much come and gone, which is good. And reports have been pretty upbeat. Now, the top 5, I would say, large tech companies in the S&P 500 that have reported so far, which include Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta, collectively those 5 companies made over $93 billion just last quarter. So to put things in perspective there, corporate profits are continuing to churn out in the United States, which is great. Unemployment continues to be at record lows, and the economy is trugging along here as we head deeper into this election year. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Last announcement, really quick. Everybody, go ahead and check your email if you haven't already. On Thursday, right as the market closed, I emailed everybody our free investing newsletter called Behind the Street. We talked about a lot of stuff, very, I should say, deep dives on specific sectors, particularly the financial sector. But also, we included our 2024 Walks on Wall Street summer reading list. Yeah, that's right. So if you are traveling, if you're going to the beach, you're headed to the Hamptons, out to Montauk, if you're going to Miami, wherever you're going, right? Maybe you're staying home and you need something interesting to read as it relates to business, finance, and the financial markets, go ahead and check out the 2024 Walks on Wall Street reading list. You could do so by scanning the QR code on your screen and punching in your email, and that will bring you to our Substack, where we publish every other Thursday. Now, lastly, if you guys have any recommendations for me, obviously summer is approaching. I'm getting together my summer reading list. If anybody has any suggestions for me or the chat, let us know. Make a comment on our Substack on your favorite reads for the summer. With that being said, let me go ahead and close up the laptop. I'll say hello to everybody in the chat, and let's, start our expedition or our excursion down to the West Village. Thanks for joining. All right, let me clip the microphone on here. All right, we're good. Let's see who we got. I see D, what's up? JY, Sally, Gord, Ivan Hernandez. Hey, there's Dave, Western Mass Dave. Good to see you. Rockstar says you love Montauk. I do too. Haven't been there in a long time though. Gary Carpenter, welcome. I see D, Mark T, New England Crypto, Dale, all of our moderators. DC322, appreciate it. All right, let me get this QR code out of the way. Turn off the Wi-Fi. And we are off. Hey, FredX, what's going on, man? Always a pleasure to see you from Alaska. PLA30 says, yay, the West Village, my favorite. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places in the city too, particularly in the summer. Big bar scene there, very lively. It's just a really interesting and fun scene. And since it is Saturday, I thought we would head there. Now, guys, I actually pretty much had the day off today. It was very quiet, right? We did have a lot of open houses, but what I like to do, particularly on holiday weekends, this weekend's a pretty big holiday weekend in the United States. It's Mother's Day weekend, so happy Mother's Day to all the moms in the chat, right? Like a condo, you don't get much street traffic like people walking in like you do in the suburbs. So I was pretty much at the office all day today, right there, right next to this building, 432 Park Avenue. And I had the whole office to myself today, and I spent pretty much the entire day just organizing myself from the prior crazy hectic week, and wow, do I feel amazing. Does anybody else, ever go into the office on a weekend, there's not a person in the office, and you can sit down at your desk, you can collect your thoughts, and you can kind of take a breather and organize yourself? I mean, man, it feels amazing. It feels like you have a grip on what's going on. So I would highly, highly recommend that. So if you're feeling this kind of anxiety from just general work, if you can come in the office on a weekend, maybe grab yourself a cup of coffee when nobody's in the office and just come in and organize yourself, my God, does it feel amazing. Anyway, so at least that's good. Now next week, we will still be doing the live stream, but there's going to be no stream on Wednesday because I'm going to be doing some travel. I'm flying from JFK to Miami, Florida. And yeah, so there's going to be no broadcast Wednesday, but we should be live from downtown Miami and Brickell on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then Sunday, we're going to be back in New York. I got an early flight Sunday morning, landing in New York City early afternoon. So it's pretty much just going to be business as usual, but 3 live streams from Miami. Yeah, Rockstar says, yep, it feels like you own the place. I know. John says, meditation is very important. It is very important. Western Mass Dave says it's good to take advantage of the empty nest to reconstruct and catch up. 100%. And a lot of times it's difficult to do that, right? Particularly if you have a million things going on. But I think everybody needs one day not to talk to clients, don't engage in any new business activity, just kind of plan for the future and organize yourself, which is great, which I need to learn to do a little bit more. But anyway. Check this out. Now, I was scrolling through the Forbes list just out of curiosity. I'm doing an interesting project that I may share with you guys in due time. But the number one person on the Forbes list now is not Elon Musk. It is Bernard Arnault, who is the CEO of LVMH. And this building right here is the Tiffany building. It sits right on the corner of West 57th Street and 5th Avenue. This is the building that they did about a $500 million renovation into. I think it looks beautiful. Did a really, really great job. But it's interesting to kind of go on that Forbes list and scroll through every single page individually and kind of do an analysis and take note of the industries that these particular people or even families are in, right? Very interesting fields. A lot of which you would guess, right? Finance. But the lion's share of people that are in the top 20, it's technology, which really kind of tells you where the puck is going, so to speak. This technological boom, this technological innovation wave, so to speak, as we're standing outside the Trump Tower. Pretty much the top 20 on the Forbes list is dominated by some sort of technologist, right? You have Musk, you have Zuckerberg, you have Larry Ellison. It's quite interesting. A lot of semiconductor businesses too. Yeah, John says, how's the semiconductor industry doing? Seems to be doing pretty good, and I think that's probably the main deciding factor if this bull market is going to continue on or not. They still have the Trump Tower totally barricaded and blocked off. Anyway, I think that's probably going to be the deciding factor. So in Dow theory, and I know we said we wouldn't talk about the markets tonight, but in Dow, a component of Dow theory is that when the Dow Transports breaks into a new high, that's confirmation of a stable bull market, right? Like a follow through. I think you could swap out the Dow Transports and put in the SOX index, so ticker symbol SOXX, which is the Semiconductor Index. Because if you think about the businesses, if you think about the products and the services that are going to drive most of the economic growth, and this is pretty much what all the experts are agreeing on, it's artificial intelligence, it's going to be machine learning, autonomous driving, and the like. And the lifeblood of those technologies is going to be chips and semiconductors. So if revenues are declining and semiconductor companies aren't doing that well, that probably means that this AI wave was a big hype cycle. But if we see continuation in revenue growth and demand for major chips from companies like NVIDIA, AMD, Taiwan Semi, things like that, that could be a confirmation that a lot of this innovation has some staying power. Hey Peter, what's going on? Good to see you. We're going to make our trek all the way down to the West Village tonight. Oh, before I forget, so on the topic of semiconductors, you guys have to pull up the most recent interview with Stan Druckenmiller on CNBC. I think this was 2 weeks ago, or it might have been a week ago. I forget it. It seems as if time is an illusion now. This is the University Club. You can see how beautiful the crown moldings in the ceiling is inside the University Club here. It's unbelievable. But anyway, as I was saying about that Stan Druckenmiller interview, he was talking about AI. Well, one of the questions that one of the anchors of the journalist asked is, Stan Druckenmiller, we know that you were an early adopter in terms of establishing a sizable position in NVIDIA. Do you think that AI is a big hype cycle, or do you think it actually has some staying power and are things going to catch on? And what he said reminded me of a very famous quote that I believe Bill Gates first coined. I think it was Bill Gates. And what Stan Druckenmiller said is, short term, people are probably overestimating the capabilities of artificial intelligence in the short term, right, which could cause an intermediate term bubble. But long term, oh, look at this. Look at how cool the retail cases are in this place. But anyway, he said long term, he thinks the market is actually underestimating the capabilities and the impact of AI. So this reminds me of that Bill Gates quote where he says, many entrepreneurs significantly overestimate what they can do in the short term, but they significantly underestimate what they can do in the long run. Speaking of Bill Gates, we're actually standing directly outside the Microsoft store on Fifth Avenue. But anyway, I think I would definitely agree. These moves could last 7 to 10 years, which would be called a cyclical bull market. And within cyclical bull markets, you have intermediate term bears and corrections. And I believe that's what we'll get. Now, speaking of AI, did anybody get a chance to watch the All In podcast with Sam Altman? I believe this was released on Friday night. Amazing podcast for anybody who's interested in AI from an investment perspective, and maybe you're a business leader and you're interested in artificial intelligence from an application standpoint. So there was a lot of talk about GPT-4, its different capabilities, and the interview was really good because they did a lot. I think the interviewers, which is like Chamath, David Sachs and the like, they did a really good job with kind of really prying and prodding at Sam Altman to kind of get into his head, to really have him cough up essentially his view and vision of AI. particularly as it relates to mobile applications, which was pretty cool. Hey, Solo401, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. Shell says AI will catch on and criminals will find a way to use it to commit crimes. John Sunderland says AI has lots of staying power. All companies dream of creating efficiencies in business with artificial intelligence, and it will do that. I think I agree. Oscar Diaz says yes, one of the first usage of AI was called fuzzy logic, mainly used on applications. My chat's going all crazy tonight. Applications, but routines were programmed. Giggling Bear says I used ChatGPT, instructed to explain a screenshot of a current SPX candlestick. Interesting. Now, what I'm most excited about, I should say, and I kind of made a post on X or on Twitter about it, is GPT and other kind of chatbots being able to make real-time decisions and recommendations in other applications. So one of the things that I was thinking about, let's say if you can have a mobile integrated GPT on your phone, right? So instead of asking Siri, like, hey Siri, call me an Uber, and it's very cumbersome, it doesn't really work. I think Siri is it's just not up to par. But if you can have a GPT tool to say, hey, call me an Uber, and let's say if you're standing on Madison Avenue, right? Instead of ChatGPT just obeying your commands, if it could have a mind of its own, think for itself, and kind of give you pushback a little bit and make recommendations. So here's an example. Let's say if you're standing on Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue is a northbound avenue, right? Fifth Avenue is southbound. So let's say if you work at 575 Madison, let's say if you work in the same office as me, and you ask GPT to call you an Uber, and Madison Avenue is jam-packed because it's rush hour. GPT could recommend and say, sure, I'll call you an Uber, but it's best that you walk one block over to Fifth Avenue to alleviate the possibility of your Uber driver, waiting 20 minutes to come around the block. So you could save 20 minutes in traffic time by walking to Fifth Avenue, and your Uber will meet you there instead of just picking you up on Madison and then going through all the red lights to make a U-turn. So for someone that's not from New York City, and this is just a very, very specific example, that would be very helpful, right? So will there come a day where GPT or any of these chatbots will be so smart that they can make and suggest and essentially make decisions in other applications? I think that is potentially the future. Look at 30 Rockefeller Center tonight. Looks really nice. Hey, Lance is here. Alan says, how far out do you think GPT is from being real-time capable like that? If Google can collect real-time map data, surely GPT can. Yeah, I mean, I think they probably have the capability to do that. It's just how would you integrate that, right? Because from what I see, and I'm not an engineer, right? But from what I see with all of these AI bots that are really helpful, by the way, like I like GPT, I use it all the time, but it's more of the user experience with communicating with an AI is like you're its master. Does that make sense? Like when you ask it something, it gives you the exact answer. It's not like a normal human conversation. Like if you were talking to your buddy, like, hey, let's call an Uber, let's get to Penn Station. Maybe your buddy's like, oh no, Uber's gonna take forever. Let's get on the subway, right? That is kind of what I'm looking for from an AI to give you subtle pushback on data it collects in real time and suggest you better alternatives. That, I think, is going to be crazy if it can do that. And then the question is, how does it make decisions in other applications for you? Hey, Evan Weeks, what's up? Says that's right in the wheelhouse of the use case for AI that we have today. Excuse me, which is really encouraging. Evan Weeks is very easily. Now, Evan, I think you'd like that interview with Sam Altman. The podcast is called the All In Podcast with Chamath Palihapitiya, David Sachs, Friedberg, and they were really grilling Sam Altman with all these questions, and it was interesting to see his responses of what he thinks the future of those applications are. And what was funny? I was listening to the podcast today as I was kind of organizing things, and they brought up one of the same questions that we all brought up on the chat one night, which is, how is it going to impact music? And they literally brought up that same example, because if you go on YouTube right now and you type in Justin Bieber AI cover, they're actually pretty good. You can listen to any of your favorite artists covering any of your favorite songs, and it pretty much sounds exactly the same as they sound. So how is, is there going to come a time where you could go to GPT and say, hey, write me a Taylor Swift song about, XYZ topic in her voice, and it's going to spit out a brand new song? Who's going to get compensated for that, if anybody, right? And if that's the case, if they're going to build those capabilities to allow AI to do that, who's going to regulate it? Really interesting stuff. Hey, Soho Joe is here. What's going on? Good to see you, Soho Joe. Deborah says, nothing like stealing artists' work for your own use. That's what AI does. Evan Weeks is what you're asking for it to do is abstract thinking to detect your intent rather than respond literally and strictly. To your request. That's not easy, but the data integrations you're asking are. Yeah. I think that's the next step into AI. And what could be another cool thing is, just to kind of make it this stream related, when I'm reading a comment in the chat, maybe there'll come a day where my phone yikes, little fender bender here on Fifth Avenue. But for example, so we're streaming on an iPhone 13 mini, right? An iPhone 13 mini, the screen is so small that it's difficult for me to read the comments. So when I'm reading a comment, I get halfway through reading it, and then the chat goes kind of crazy and continues to scroll. Maybe there'll come a time where the front camera on my phone will be able to detect my eyes to see which comment I'm reading and kind of do like an auto scroll. That'd be cool too. Now, kind of back to what Evan Weeks was saying, is we do have the capabilities to do precisely that, to kind of have an AI, instead of just doing everything you ask it to do, which may not be the most appropriate, logical, and efficient task. The next step is kind of like Tony Stark. It's kind of like Iron Man, right? Have you ever seen the movie Iron Man, when he's asking that virtual assistant things, and the virtual assistant's like kind of having a conversation with him, testing him, and it'll almost be like having a coworker. It'll be very strange, but OGO says, Tom, if AI is not regulated, it will definitely get out of hand. Hey, Tom from Midtown, what's up? Says eventually it'll also include, hey, AI do walks in Wall Street tour around FIDE tonight. That's probably pretty possible. That's hilarious. You know what that reminds me of? Whenever we're in Miami, do you guys remember those little robots that deliver the food all over the city? If you haven't seen one of our Miami, Florida live streams, if you're in Brickell or downtown Miami, instead of like all the delivery bicycle guys we have here in New York, what they also have in Miami are these little robots that where the restaurant, essentially when they get an order, they'll put the food in this little robot and it'll drive it to your apartment. It's crazy. All you need to do is just rig a camera on that, drive it around the city, and then have someone do a voiceover of the commentary. Evan Weeks says we're still a ways off from that, definitely, sadly. The power of abstraction is beyond the scope of today's sequence prediction and completion AI algorithms that run LLMs. Ah, that's what it was called, the Jarvis guy. Now, Evan, if you had to make a prediction, right? And come as close as you can, based on your expertise, based on your industry experience in working in tech. How far realistically would you say we are from an Iron Man-esque AI bot that has a personality and can essentially test us? 5 years, 10 years? Look at this building. So doesn't this building kind of remind you a little bit of 130 William in Lower Manhattan? What do you guys think? So this is on the corner of East 43rd Street and 5th. This is going to be condos. But the architecture, I should say the design of the windows, very similar to what you would find at 130 William. Very, very similar, the facade. Hey, Joe E, what's up? Mock East is perfect weather today, Tom. It was a little cold today. Deborah S, is it a video? Is it a files folder? Is it a printers making plastic moldings? Hold on one second. Yeah, Dave, doesn't it? It does look a lot like 130 William for sure. But I do want to go back to Deborah's point for a second. Deborah made the comment that, you know, AI is good for fraud and ripping off artists, musicians. You gotta, Deborah, you would really enjoy that interview with Sam Altman on the All In podcast, because they addressed that exact concern. And that was the first concern I thought of, because I actually, to be honest, I listened to a lot of those AI songs. I think some of those AI songs are better than the original artists. It's crazy. What is this guy doing? But anyway, Sam Altman kind of addresses those concerns. And if I'm not mistaken, you're not able to produce those type of audio recordings in GPT at the moment. Evan Weeks' long answer says current LLMs algorithms are limited in that they cannot form new data categories themselves. They rely on human intervention. Independent categorization is at the heart of abstraction. Yeah, it's kind of like, what would that be considered? Like narrow AI? So narrow AI as in you're just feeding a model and training it based on massive amounts of data. So you're saying right now it doesn't have the ability to kind of have a mind of its own and go off and source its own data. This is a pretty good shot of One Vanderbilt and the Chrysler Building. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these streams almost every day starting at 8:30. I think there was a big Japanese festival in the city today. I was on the Upper West Side for a little bit. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. Right outside the Stephen Schwarzman building, New York Public Library. We're going to make a left on 6th Avenue and head all the way down to the West Village. John Sunderland says, I'm concerned that stock trading will become more difficult with AI. Algorithms already making it unpredictable. Well, I mean, that's been going on for a long, long time, and it's interesting that you bring that up. 2 days ago, unfortunately, the pretty much creator of Quant, Jim Simons, unfortunately passed away. He is the CEO and founder of Renaissance Technologies. And he essentially got his start by being a math teacher, being a mathematician. He was hired by Stony Brook to essentially build up their mathematics department, which at the time wasn't really a good program at Stony Brook. They had a good physics department, they just didn't really have a good math department. But so Jim Simons really built that up, and then he started to trade currencies and commodities with all these complex sort of algorithmic trading strategies. And essentially grew Renaissance Technologies into pretty much the most profitable hedge fund ever. I believe they were able to achieve a 67% CAGR for over 20 years, which is just unbelievable. There's a good book on Jim Simons. If you're interested in Quant, I would highly, highly suggest reading it. And pretty much since the Quant revolution on Wall Street, those are, generally speaking, the most lucrative jobs on the street. Right, you used to think about, working on Wall Street and sales and trading or in investment banking, and those being the most lucrative careers. But it's actually the quantitative researchers that make the most money, generally speaking, on Wall Street. So some of the most notable quant firms, obviously Renaissance Technologies, Jim Simons passed away. Citadel, 2 Sigma, Hudson River Trading, Jump Trading, D.E. Shaw, David Shaw and Co. Those are pretty much money-making machines. Evan Weeks says, Tom, I went and watched that TED Talk with Scott Galloway. Excellent talk. Yeah, I think he did a really good job. Now, for those of you who don't kind of know what Evan Weeks is talking about, a few streams ago we had this interesting conversation which kind of sparked because we were talking about New York University, and there's a very well-known professor that teaches at the Stern School of Business, Scott Galloway. I think he's a professor in marketing. Really sharp guy, really smart guy, very well respected. And he recently just gave a TED Talk. So if you pull up another browser, I mean, this is the weekend, so I'd highly recommend, take 30 minutes out of the day and listen to it. Professor Scott Galloway, TED Talk. I thought it was very good. I don't necessarily agree with everything in that talk, but I thought it was well put together, very well presented, and most things I would say generally I think he hit the nail on the head, particularly as it relates to the ramifications of ZIRP, or zero interest rate policy, which we talk about a lot on the stream. Which essentially states that since the 2008 financial crisis, the Fed really had to step in here and provide massive amounts of quantitative easing for far too long, for over a decade, right? Where you had interest rates pretty much near zero, and you had the money printer on 24/7, 365. Now, the problem with this is that it hyperinflated asset prices, both of equities and of real estate. But if you look at the overall breakdown of people who generally own these types of assets, it's the top 10% bucket of Americans own 90% of all the assets. That includes stocks, that includes real estate. So those assets got inflated, and it created a massive wealth divide. Yes, it also sparked massive innovation, right? You could also argue, and this is actually kind of me playing devil's advocate, I really do believe if we didn't have that decade of artificially low interest rates, all of these amazing SaaS companies, like the software as a service companies that we always talk about, I honestly don't think the lion's share of those would exist. Because if you think about the scalability model with SaaS, right, and let's say if you're a VC, right, and you're operating in an environment of zero interest rates, the business model of software as a service really worked because you could throw everything back into the business and delay profitability. So you could take out a bunch of debt and you could really turbocharge growth at the expense of profitability first. And then it's essentially a theory that you want to just capture market share at all costs. It doesn't matter how much money you lose, it's just you have to go out there and capture as much market share as possible. And then once you have the market share, the next step is to reduce churn. Because if you have 100,000 customers paying you $100,000 per annum and your churn rate is, let's say, 1%, that's pretty good business. And if your margins are 50%, which, in software, it's very, very possible to have 50% plus margins, that is a great business. That's a phenomenal business. But generally speaking, 0% money really allowed those businesses to take off and grow at the explosive rate that it did. So, I think the the decade of ZIRP created massive wealth divide in the country, which is totally true. But then playing devil's advocate, you could also say, well, look at all these crazy software businesses that sparked up because of cheap money, essentially. I just want to point out something real quick. So this is 6th Avenue, or Avenue of the Americas. This is West 36th Street. The vast majority of these retail storefronts, particularly during the COVID virus, used to be totally vacant. Now almost everything is at 100% occupancy. So there has been a real big return in occupancy on the retail side. I'll kind of cross the street to show you what I'm talking about, but I mean, this is all relatively new, like a year and a half. The sushi place is new, this pizza spot, you have something else that says coming soon. This all used to be nothing. But if you look all the way down to the Paris Spaghetti, pretty much every single one of these is occupied, which is very good news. And it seems as if business is good. I mean, it's heavy street trafficked, or heavy traffic street. Jonathan says it's good to be ambitious, but often people make the mistake that in search for wealth. Oops, lost your comment. To meet targets, it can come and go. Also, number one priority is to check your health. Agreed. Oh yeah, Evan Weeks' Professor Scott Galloway's presentation about the accessibility to higher education is spot on, 100%. 100%. And I like it was funny. I was laughing in the office when I listened to that part of the presentation, because I feel like we've said that once on the stream, that, you know, these places like Harvard, Princeton, Brown, Yale, they're not educational institutions anymore. They're massive hedge funds. If you think about the size of the endowments at some of these institutions and the professional money managers that they hire to run those endowments, there's no reason why you should be charging ridiculous amounts of money to these students when you have all of this money in endowment. You know, your endowment's supposed to be use to, hold on, we'll wait till this guy goes by. You know, the endowment should be used to cover the cost of education for prospective students, to give them a chance so they don't have to go into all this debt. But the kind of the hierarchy in the model has turned into all the donations that go to these big schools. It's just one big profitable slush fund, private equity, VC firm, hedge fund, all wrapped into one, right? If these institutions really cared about the education, spend the money on the education to help these kids out, go to school. I thought that was a really good point. I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar endowments. Beautiful shot of the Empire State Building here. Oh, just a quick reminder, everybody, if you're interested in kind of these conversations that we have each and every night on the live stream, I just sent out our free investing newsletter. So if you scan the QR code on your screen and punch in your email, it's going to take you to our Substack. And oftentimes we include a lot of these links to these podcast episodes, TED Talks that we discuss on the live stream. So check it out. In this week's issue of the Behind the Street newsletter, I also included our 2024 Walks on Wall Street summer reading list. So if you need some good books to read this summer when you're, making your excursions to the Hamptons or wherever you're going, feel free to check it out. It's the first, 25% of the newsletter is our reading list. So you could scan the QR code, punch in your email, and you'll get it. Mark Francis is the Harvard endorsement, or the endowment could pay for all undergraduates and still make money? Probably. Probably, for sure. Hey, Andre Brown, what's going on? Good to see you as always. I also think a big part of the problem that wasn't really mentioned in that TED Talk with education is it's really the government that kind of created this whole big mess in the first place. Because I believe colleges should be run like a business. But if you have the government kind of putting a bid in the market, a permanent bid in the market, it kind of sucks all the competition out of it. So what I mean by that is, as we wait for the traffic here, the government has been in the business of kind of subsidizing all of these student loans, which essentially turns the incentivization structure upside down. It flips it 180, right? Because they're not incentivized to be competitive on price, because there is no price discovery, because everybody is essentially guaranteed to be able to afford to pay for it, because they could just take out the loan in any amount that they want, right? If you can get a government subsidized loan. So knowing this, a lot of the institutions or colleges, when they're drawing up their budgets, there's virtually no incentive to reduce the budget. It's always expand the budget, hire more administrators at these ridiculous salaries, build more swimming pools and sports stadiums and all this other stuff. And I think this actually was mentioned a little bit in the TED Talk. If you look at the amount of money that has gone to hiring admins at a college or university, as it relates to how much money has went into actually hiring the educators, it's just like a cartoonish chart. So if you got the government out of the business of guaranteeing all these loans, these universities would be forced to be price competitive, right? They couldn't just charge whatever they want. And just like a corporation, right, if you think about some of the conversations that we've been having with, Meta and Mark Zuckerberg, the board of directors at Meta really put pressure on Zuck to essentially fire 20% of the company because it suffered from ridiculous corporate bloat. There's obscene corporate bloat at colleges and universities across the country, but none of these admins will ever get fired because there's never any budget cuts. But if you got the government out of the way, out of the business of guaranteeing all these loans, well, you would have the vast majority of students not being able to afford to pay for it, and you'd have to make some changes. You'd have to fire some administrators, you'd have to, cut some of these useless departments, and you'd have to focus on, guess what? The things that matter, that should attract students to your university, which is the education. So it's interesting, kind of what has happened. All right, we are in Koreatown here. Just one quick thing I did want to touch on really briefly, and kind of shifting gears here. I've been noticing very positive price action in the financial sector. So if you look at the broad basket of stocks that make up the XLF, right? So the ticker symbol for the financial sector ETF, the SPDRs ETF, you have companies like JP Chase, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, American Express, MasterCard, Visa, almost all, Morgan Stanley as well, Fiserv, almost all of them are trading at or near all-time record highs, if not 52-week highs. But I've probably read at least 4 articles so far just in the last week of analysts focusing and kind of sounding alarm bells of potential major bank collapses in the United States. Now, I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but what I'm saying is price action in the financial sector is saying that's definitely not going to happen. And more broadly speaking, earnings were actually pretty upbeat and very, very positive this earnings season in some of the major banks, particularly in the pure play investment banks at the bulge bracket level, like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and even some of the boutique banks that handle some of the smaller M&A transactions. So if you look at a broader basket of those companies, right, and we've talked about this multiple times, but it's very important because financials usually lead, or they should lead, the market in terms of the overall health of the economy. Piper Sandler's doing really well. Houlihan Lokey's doing very well. Obviously the behemoth JP Chase. Wells Fargo is 8 points away from a new all-time record high. This is telling us that the economy is going to remain very, very strong, and that potentially inflation is going to remain very hot, or hotter than expected. And the reason for that is you just need to ask yourself, if investment banks are doing well, what does that mean about the economy? Well, if you think about the business of a bank, it's to lend money, and it's to help advise on deals. It's to help other companies acquire other companies. It's to help take public companies, right, in terms of the IPO market. So if those businesses are robust, well, what does that mean about the overall economy, right? It's kind of like that trickle-down effect. You can use specific sectors in the market as leading indicators for US GDP. And I think it's going to be very, very upbeat, contrary to what many people on the street think. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be right, but earnings and price action are telling us that this economy is going to rock throughout the remainder of 2024, which is interesting because on Friday, we got consumer sentiment numbers out. Did anybody see the consumer sentiment report that came out? Consumer sentiment came in very pessimistic, which shouldn't, for lack of a better word, it shouldn't have come in so pessimistic. Now, one of the reasons why I think it did, oh, that guy made a way too fast turn. Just to cut right to the chase, the reason why I think consumer sentiment came in quite soft is because it's an election year and there's a lot of uncertainty. And we sort of covered this last night, but it's kind of important to hammer on it again. During election years, you pretty much have half the country on opposite sides of the aisle, as always. And if you think that Joe Biden's going to win again and you're a Trump supporter, well, you're like, oh my God, the country's going to continue to spiral and it's going to go out of control and it's going to be the end of the world. But if you have, Trump win, all the Biden and the Democrats are going to think the same thing, but just on the other side of the aisle. So there's tons of uncertainty, and there's so much emotion that I think is skewing a lot of that sentiment data. It's kind of like, I really do believe Americans don't know how good we have it right now compared to other economies in the rest of the world. By all metrics and by all indicators, if you look at the manufacturing sector in the US, if you go to the Institute for Supply Management, the PMI numbers, PMIs have been turning up for 6 months. So you have manufacturing coming back in the US, you have services sector rocking in the US, you have unemployment near some of the lowest levels in history, wages are ticking up. So you have, the perfect setup for this economy and this market to go higher, and potentially a lot higher. So I just wanted to quickly point that out. We wrote about it briefly in the newsletter. Hey, Christina, good to see you. Christian, welcome. All right, these two places here, coming up on the left. Two of the best Korean restaurants in the city. This one's called Take 31, and the one right next to it to the right is called Her Name is Han. Now they're the same owner, very similar cuisine, but two different restaurants. Very good. If you're visiting the city this summer, highly recommend it. It's in between 5th Avenue and Madison Avenue on 31st Street. So Take 31 and Her Name is Han. Great places. If you come on the weekend, you're probably going to need to make a reservation though. All right, let's head to the West Village. Hey, Jimmy B, what's going on? Cold Matter. Evan Weeks is the average American is looking at the housing market and realizing that they may never be able to achieve the American dream. Consumer sentiment can't help be affected by that. That's a really good point. In some markets, which is quite interesting, it's the markets that have been doing the right thing and building supply. Those are the kind of markets where you're seeing prices cool a little bit. Like Austin, Texas is cooling materially, which is helping. In essence, it's not rocket science. If you want prices to come down, you're going to need to build. You're going to need supply to come on the market. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because another sector that has been outperforming in a major way have been home builders, right? Pull up any chart of a home builder, Taylor Morrison Home, Pulte Group, Toll Brothers. It's pretty much just been up and to the right. Now, why is that? Well, yeah, earnings and margins are very, very good. But to me, that's the market saying that the vast majority of supply is not going to come from resales. It's going to have to come from new build. And one of the reasons for that may be, and many of the chatters kind of brought this up 2 streams ago, is because most people in the US, if they have a mortgage outstanding, their 30-year fixed is most likely under 5%. Right, I think the statistic is about 85% of Americans with a mortgage outstanding, assuming they have a 30-year fixed, their interest rate is below 5%. So there's no incentive to sell your house and go get something else, because you'd lose that, you'd lose free money essentially. So there needs to be a catalyst. So I think that's why home builders have been rocking and potentially will continue to do very well. Also, housing is lagging. If you look at CPI, which is interesting because we're getting the next CPI report next week. So if you type !CPI in the chat, so !CPI in the chat, and if you deselect every single category except headline and shelter, you'll notice that shelter is lagging headline CPI by about 8 months. Usually it's supposed to be 6 months, but in this market it's about 8. And that's because, obviously asset prices correct in order of liquidity. But yeah, housing prices aren't coming down as fast as people expected. I guess that'd be a good question for the audience here. If you could put in the chat what market you're in let's say if you're in the southwest, the southeast, the northeast, northwest, what market are you in, and kind of what are you seeing in your market? Are prices cooling? Are prices accelerating? Is it still pretty competitive out there? I mean, what are you guys seeing in your market? Hey, what's up, Victor? DC 322 says good economy with flaws. For sure. Nothing's perfect, for sure. We have about multi-trillion dollars in debt. That's all right. Steve's, Tom, I'm an appraiser in the Jersey Shore market. So kind of, what are you seeing out there? Is the Jersey Shore market still white hot, or are things coming down? Steve says, Tom, prices are not cooling, more stabilizing than anything else. It's a good data point. Thank you for sharing that. And that's coming from an appraiser. So, Sam Oliver says, Tom, they're building smaller homes under $2,000 a foot, which I think is appropriate. I mean, I think we had that conversation a few streams ago. I don't think anybody really needs more than 2,500 square feet. That's a lot. Alex's prices are still high, still competitive, low supply, high demand, Monmouth County, New Jersey, right by the beach, with transportation in New York City via the New Jersey Transit. Ren 1018 says, I think the real estate is still doing well. I see houses selling for over asking still. Wow. Kenny says the Bay Area, one house sold with 34 offers. Wow. Well, in New York City, there's not a lot of transactions being done. Jimmy B's Surfside Heights prices are through the roof. The interesting thing about New York City, particularly Manhattan, this is a really cool Rolls Royce here. Look at that. Now, what I've noticed about the city, and when I say the city, I mean Manhattan, sellers are very reluctant to negotiate on list price, particularly if it's a resale, I've been noticing, in Manhattan. And in many of the deals that I've been working, the reason is, if you're listing, and this is just a total generalization, right? This isn't everybody. But generally speaking, let's say if you have, a $4 million apartment in Manhattan, or a $3.5 million apartment in Manhattan, chances are that's not your only property. Chances are you may have a house in Greenwich, Connecticut, you have something on Long Island, you have something in Miami, you have something in the Carolinas, and you have a lot of equity in these properties, and you're pretty well capitalized. You have a healthy portfolio of stocks, you have a healthy real estate portfolio that's probably cash flowing. So their logic is, I'll wait until the market heats up again to get my price, because I don't really need to sell it. I want to sell it. I want to cash out. I want to get that money, to free up some liquidity to go pour it in other ventures. But do I need to take a 15% haircut on my property? Because that's where the market is, by the way. On some of these properties that we've been involved in, I think the market would transact about 10 to 15% off list, just to kind of make the deals pencil for some of the buyers. However, the sellers, they just don't, they're like, I don't really need to do it. They're like, I don't need to do it. I don't, it's not like, I would say Manhattan's a very interesting market where the price points are high and there's a lot of generational ownership here, where they don't need to fire sale their stuff. Some of these sellers, it's like, they're like, I appreciate your aggressiveness to get the deal done, but I don't need to fire sale my stuff to you. I'll just take it off the market and wait 3-5 years to get my price, which has been frustrating. But that's kind of what I've been seeing in Manhattan, right? In the boroughs, you're seeing, I would say, more transactions. But if you want deals or discounts, it's probably going to be new development. You're going to get that because the developers can throw a lot of money in the deals. Hey, Shell says 2020, I got my house for $120,000. Today, according to the market, it's at $500,000. Jeez, it's insane. Well, I mean, that's a really attractive return. But the problem with that, though, is it's not like you're going to access any of that liquidity. So the only thing that goes up is your expenses, which sucks. I'm in a similar boat. Full green lights is Tom, Nassau County, North Shore. Tough market, not selling like it was. Hey, Steve Gonzalez. Tom from Midtown says current zoning laws allowing houses up to 20,000 square feet in the Hamptons, but might soon be capped at 10,000 square feet. I mean, 20,000 square feet is ridiculous. That is so big. I mean, my house, I think of livable square footage, it's probably about 1,500 or 1,600 square feet, and I don't even use a fraction of that square footage. I think people can make do with a lot less square footage. Anyway, if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these live streams pretty much every night, starting at 8:30. Look at this big line to get into this rooftop bar. I think this is 240 Fifth Avenue. I don't know if I'd ever wait in that line. Shell says, I feel sorry for my kids. They're pretty much priced out of purchasing a home in this area. Well, you could always just, keep that house in your family, and pass it down through generations. That's kind of my strategy in real estate. I just want to essentially act as a collector, collect these assets, and then when I die, hopefully that's later rather than sooner, just pass it on to the kids. And then have the kids acquire more assets and roll it into the next generation. That's really how you build, generational wealth through families, right? If you study some of the wealthiest families in the United States, they acquire assets and they keep them in the family, and they just roll it down through generation and generation. I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but all of probably the wealthiest individuals in your life, right? It could be a friend, it could be a family member, maybe a mentor. If you think about the common characteristics of all these successful people, it's that they own stuff, right? I mean, that was the biggest kind of wake-up call for me when I kind of got exposed to, business in Manhattan, is that a lot of these, wealthy kids that, I've been exposed to that, went to all these Ivy League schools, it's their families, they have so many assets. They're like, oh, we're going to go vacation at this place, or, we have investment properties in the Carolinas. It's just they accumulate things over long durations. They're patient, and they just pass it down to their families. They don't, fire sale things when prices go down. They're very diligent. So the longer you can hold on to these good assets, right? Hence I say good assets, the better. And when you get old, just give them to your kids, assuming you teach your kids how to be good stewards of their environment. Hey, Tampa St. Pete, thank you so much for your very generous $2 donation. Appreciate you very much. This is much love from the Bay Area. Stay safe out there. I'll be in Florida next week. I'm not going to be in Tampa though. I will be in Miami. But I do like Tampa. We were working on a deal south of Tampa in a place called Sarasota, Florida, which very close to Sarasota. Apparently, they have one of the best beaches in the world. It's called Siesta Key Beach. Anybody in the chat been to Siesta Key Beach? Apparently, it's just the most gorgeous white sand paradise. Essentially, is kind of the only way you could describe it. Oh, this is the portal to Ireland. I totally forgot this was here. Let's check this out. I feel as if we should have more of these, looking into different countries.
We live here. Sub chat.
Look at that. So this is a portal looking into Dublin, Ireland. It's quite interesting, right?
Giving us the bird? That's great. Giving us the bird?
Oh, don't flick these guys off. That's classic. Of course, everybody would flick each other off. Let's see what's on the other side of it.
It's like these are drunk kids. These are drunk kids. Show them the thing.
That's so cool, right?
Wait, we have a message. He has a message he needs to send to the Dublin. Show him a message. Come on. It's funny. Come on. He's been working on this all day. He's been working on it all day. Ah! Wait, do they see it? No, wait, no. Oh, where's the cat? Where's the...
It'd be cool if they could hear us, right? That's ridiculous. And then that's the building that blocks the Empire State Building. Spencer says, what is that thing? Well, it's a temporary exhibit that's a 24-hour broadcast to Dublin, Ireland, I believe. Which is cool. But it'd be cooler if there was audio.
Like that video and audio is being recorded. That's great.
Oh, there's no audio, but there's just video. That's hilarious. What do you guys think? I think that's pretty funny, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Looks like it's pouring raining over there.
Yeah, that is good. I think that'll get a rise out of that. That'll get a rise. I got it. Where's the angle?
Let's see what's on the other side. It says NYC portal, bridge to a united planet. portals existing countries around the world and invite us to meet above borders and differences. Well, that sounds nice, but in reality, everybody's just, giving each other the finger. But it is cool. I wish it kind of had an audio component, though, right? All right, let's continue on our way. All right, let's continue on our way to the West Village. It's cool, we saw it at least. That's the first time I'm seeing it. It'd be funny if we had a Walks on Wall Street viewer in Dublin that could go there at the same time we're streaming, so they could see the stream, they could see themselves in the stream. That'd be hilarious. All right, everybody, so we're gonna head down to NYU, 8th Street, Washington Square Park, then we're gonna make a right and go to the West Village. Just to the left of us is the Flatiron Building. It's getting quite cold.
Fuck out of here! My bitch is right there! You see my bitch? She's right there!
All right, we'll get away from that. Someone's asking, what is the temperature of the office space in the city? Well, let me see. Steve. Well, it's interesting because if you were to say the office market is doing really well in the city, and if you were to also say the office market is doing really bad, you'd both technically be correct, which is so strange, but it's actually the truth. A lot of pretty much all the brand new Class A office towers in the city are doing exceptionally well, and they're commanding very, very high rents on a price per square foot basis. So an example would be a 1 Vanderbilt, a 425 Park, a lot of the stuff at the Hudson Yards. They're commanding like top tier rents. But a lot of the old stuff, at this point, it's just turned into, a lot of it is just a clearinghouse now. There's a lot of fire sales, which I think is just normal. I think this is a major inflection point in the business cycle where you need new product and you need to replace a lot of the older product, which will happen. There's a lot of foreclosure auctions. There's a lot of defaults happening. And that's going to cause a lot of pain short term, but long term, I think it's actually going to solve a lot of the city's problems. Because when you have a lot of these older office towers that are just sitting vacant, right? Once these get marked down, written off, they get sold into foreclosure auction. Developers, private equity, entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, are going to be able to step in the market at reasonable, or I should say more than reasonable prices, acquire these buildings and just demo them and build brand new residential. And New York City has an affordability crisis, a pretty big one. And the only way we're going to solve that is by building newer product and affordable product. And I think this is probably all going to work itself out. So the commercial real estate crisis, in terms of the older office buildings, quite strangely could be the solution to the affordability crisis in New York City, which is wild to think about, but that may possibly come to fruition over the next 10 years. And it's not just local to New York. If you go to therealdeal.com, they post a lot of these recent fire sale transactions. You have a lot of these office buildings being sold for like 10 million bucks, 20 million bucks. And these are massive, massive units. And they're either going to be, if it's feasible, they're probably going to be conversions. So they'll convert them from commercial office to residential. If it's feasible, a lot of the times it's not, because of the, the plumbing, the HVAC, the floor plates of the buildings, or they'll just demo them. They'll just be demolitions. All right, we're almost there. Hey, TD, what's going on? It's interesting to see the transition of the city. Like, we were walking through Koreatown, crazy busy, and now it's kind of dead, right? Flatiron District. And then you're going to see it pick up again once we get to 8th Street, NYU neighborhood, and finally the West Village. So we're coming up on 14th Street. There's a notable college just off to the left. It's called the New School. Let's see if it's still blocked off. Mikey says, have I ever driven in New York City? Is it worth owning a car? I mean, I've driven in New York City a lot, but I would never, ever, ever own a vehicle here, in my opinion. Owning a vehicle here is just adds problems and compounds problems on problems. And it's very expensive, because you got to find a place to park, and if you don't want to park on the street, you're going to have to park it in a garage, and that's going to cost you about $900 a month. If you want to park in a really nice garage and you have a nice car, like let's say if you have an exotic car, like an Aston Martin, something like that, right? Higher end BMW, Mercedes, it's going to cost you $1,300 to $1,500 a month to park that vehicle. And then if you get tired of waiting 30 minutes to an hour for the valet to get your car out, you're going to say, you know what, I'm just going to buy a parking space. And that's going to cost you $200,000. Or anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000, I'd say. But if you have the money and you're looking for the convenience, then yeah, you could definitely make it work. But if you're, making a normal salary, I don't think you need a car here. And plus, now you're gonna have to pay all the congestion pricing. So not only do you have to pay to park your vehicle, Not only do you have to deal with people dinging and denting and destroying your car and getting all these parking tickets, now you're gonna have to pay the congestion pricing just to drive in the city. So I definitely would not recommend having a vehicle in Manhattan. Now we just launched, speaking of parking, we just launched a pilot program in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Now for those of you who don't know where Brighton Beach is, it's deep, way out. It's literally right on the ocean, right on the water. We had an investor purchase the whole parking garage at this complex called Oceana, which is very nice condos, by the way. It's right next to the subway, right on the water. And essentially we help them through the process of condominiumizing all these spaces. So there's about 150 parking spaces, and we're running a pilot program with 20 parking spaces that are now individual deeded condo spaces, and we're offering them for sale. Like we did a sales offering. Started last week. We have 7 of them in contract at $135,000 each. We're just a week into the offering. So the demand is higher than we expected. So we may actually have to push pricing on that. Right now, people in that complex are spending anywhere from around $400 to $500 a month, or excuse me, $400 to $550 a month to rent their space. They have a first come, first serve, first right of refusal to buy their space at $135,000, and we're in contract for 7 already at $135,000. So that kind of tells you where the market is, just for a parking space all the way in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Now, if you compare those comps to some of the stuff we're doing in Manhattan on the Upper East Side, you can probably get something for like $155,000 for a parking space. If you want something a little bit more luxurious and less spaces in the garage, it'll probably then bump up to like $350,000 a space in a different neighborhood like Tribeca, something like that. So it's an interesting market, so to speak, just for parking spaces. Look at how amazing the architecture is here of these churches. Really beautiful. Now, a lot of these buildings that surround Washington Square Park, most of them are owned by NYU. And they're really, really nice. They maintain them really well. They keep the facades looking almost pretty much brand new. It's quite nice. East 11th Street all the way down to East 8th Street. It's a really nice block. Well, I gotta plug in my phone here somewhere. We'll see if we can make it to the end of the block. Someone's asking about 200 Central Park South. Yeah, 200 Central Park South is a co-op. Why? What about it specifically? It's a nice building. I think it's under construction. All right. Looks like I'm gonna have to put you guys on the floor. Quick intermission. All right, I think we're good now.
Girl.
Hey, Jules, what's going on? Hopefully you're well. Hopefully you'll be making some time for some golf this summer. For some reason I don't have what the hell happened? Hold on. Huh. I used to be able to delete people. I guess I can't anymore. Interesting. Anyway. All right, we're coming up on Washington Square Park. All right, I'm gonna pick a new moderator. Let's see who's up on the list. I feel like FredX should already be a moderator here. Let me see. I feel like Dave should too. I think out and about you should be a moderator. You can kind of get rid of that guy. I don't know, maybe I have to update my... Alright, we'll figure it out later. No, I haven't seen that article. If you want to post the article in the chat, just let me know. I'd love to take a look at it for the condo conversion for sure. Yeah. Right, 456. Well, technically there already is like an AI moderator. The Nightbot is one of those AI moderators for sure. Kevin D says, have I stayed at the Carlisle? I have not. Joe Hernandez says, Tom, when is your next newsletter? About 24 hours ago. If you check your email, you should have gotten it. I just sent it out to everybody. We send it out every other Thursday, right as the market is closing. But yeah, if you want to receive all of our financial research every other Thursday for free, you can go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email, and that'll bring you to our Substack. And we just sent out our latest issue on Thursday night. SoCal Lawrence. We've got to go to the Lower East Side, but the weather's just been so horrible. It's still even cold out tonight. Once we have our first week of sustained 75-degree weather, I'll start to come out of hibernation a little bit. But until then, we'll try to do the best we can. All right, welcome to Washington Square Park. Beautiful night. Looks like there's an office chair in the fountain. Steve says, Tom, if money was no object, which part of the city would you move? Probably Central Park South or Billionaires Row. So 57th Street or right on Central Park South. That's what I'd say. Either of those two neighborhoods. What about you? Man, I really miss Washington Square Park for sure. Steve says 220 Central Park South. Fantastic building.
Like my
Now,
dad rolled
that's the
by.
best-selling building on New York City's Billionaires Row. Because it has the same feel of 15 Central Park West. The vast majority of buildings on Billionaires Row are these glass kind of encased skyscrapers. What's interesting about 220 Central Park South is that it's really tall. I think it's like 950 feet tall, but it is not a glass facade. It's kind of like that limestone facade that you see at 15 Central Park West, which is also another amazing building. All right, here we are at the main college town of NYU. West 3rd Street, Thompson Street. We'll make this right, which is going to take us to MacDougal Street. Michelle says, would you live in the Dakota? I think I would, if I can afford it. I think in order to get approved to buy something in the Dakota, you have to have something crazy like, I think it's 7 times the valuation of the apartment in liquid assets. So if you're buying, let's say, a $10 million apartment, I think you have to have 7 times the valuation of that apartment in liquidity and liquid. That means like cash and equivalents. I think, don't quote me on that. I think it's something like that. I feel like a client told me that one time. Mikey says, what about Miami, Tom? Would you live there? Yeah, I own property there, and I will be there next week. We will be live from downtown Miami and Brickell on Wednesday. Briner says, Tom, ever been to 53 Leonard, the Jenga building? Yeah, I think it's 56 Leonard, not 53. I think you could look that up, fact check it. But yeah, we're actually working a deal right now at 56 Leonard, and I have a listing right at 5 Franklin Place. So if you go to our website and you look at the Tribeca listings, we are currently selling Unit 8A at 5 Franklin Place, which is it's a great building, really, really cool unit. And if there's any New York Rangers fans in the chat, the owner of the building, I should say the owner of the apartment 2 units above us, is a very, very famous New York Ranger. Can't say which one, but think one of the most iconic New York Rangers of all time, and then you'll probably find your answer. Very nice guy. I bumped into him a bunch of times. Really, really nice. Coming up on the Comedy Cellar. And the Blue Note Jazz Club. This is the Village Underground. Man, I love the architecture down here. Seems to be pretty busy too. All right, let's venture a little bit further. Into the village. This is currently West 3rd Street. Missouri, since this part of New York reminds you of Nashville. Really interesting. I think Nashville's a pretty cool town. I've been there once. What I really liked about Nashville, Tennessee was Vanderbilt. It's probably one of my, I'd say, top 5 favorite college campuses in New York. In the United States is Vanderbilt. It's a beautiful campus. Within walking distance of downtown, I believe. I feel like I walked from Vanderbilt to downtown. It was such a long time ago, I don't quite remember. This is a pretty cool view of the Empire State Building and One Vanderbilt from the village. Let's make this left on Cornelia Street.
Yeah.
This will take us to some of the main spots here in the village. I like it down here. It's quiet, it's cool. Now, on a price per square foot basis, Tribeca used to be the most expensive in Manhattan. Now it is the West Village. Very trendy neighborhood. And Taylor Swift's old apartment is just off to the right here. Yeah, SoCal Lawrence. So I think the Halloween parade ends here, or close to it. That's another crazy, I should say, night altogether. In New York City is Halloween night. Yeah, this is it. I think that's her old spot. Cool building. Steven Snow says, isn't this where we saw the Cybertruck? It is. Can't believe that was already last week. We saw it 2 blocks over. Who knows, maybe it'll be there again. Let's find out. Hey, Jeff. Yeah, today is Ackman's birthday. That's true. I don't know if I told you guys this, but I met Bill Ackman yesterday. Did I tell you that? I forget. Anyway. Yeah, I ran into him on right on the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street. We literally bumped into each other. It was raining. He's a very nice guy. And tall as hell. I think he's 6'4", but he looks like 6'6" in person. I mean, the guy's a giant. But yeah, I really respect what Bill Ackman is doing, particularly now with all the crazy anti-Semitic nonsense that's going on these college campuses. Ooh, that was almost an accident. Marty's is where is the Trump Hotel. That is going to be 1 Central Park West, which is a pretty, I would say, probably top maybe 3 hotels in the city. Number 1 is the Park Hyatt, I would say. Maybe number 2 is probably the Amman, New York. And number 3 is the Trump Tower. MD says, Batami cried about the market crashing the day the world shut down, all while he was shorting the market. That's actually fake news. I don't know who started that rumor, but that's actually fake news. And I'll sort of explain why that's fake news. The biggest reason is, if you go and watch the Bill Ackman interview, on CNBC during the pandemic. He was very emotional, saying, "You've got to shut the economy down. You got to shut the United States down for 30 days, and the virus will go away." And then he said, "If you don't, businesses like Hilton, all the hotels, will go to zero." And then at the end of the interview, he said, "So that's my piece. We've been very, very bearish, but then we got bullish." He's like, "We deployed about $2.5 billion worth of capital. We bought Hilton hotels, we bought Starbucks." This was on March 11th. So Ackman unwound his short position, deployed about $2.5 billion worth of liquidity, right, into the market, buying Hilton, buying Starbucks, told everybody to buy live on CNBC. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my office at 1166 Avenue of the Americas. I was freaking out. I was like, my God. And that day, I bought one stock. I was like, I just have to hold my breath and just get some exposure. And that day was the bottom of the market. Now, I believe what happened is CNBC may have chopped up the clip, and the original clip that they released, they left off the most important part, which was at the end when he said, "Now we're very bullish on the market." He said, "If we shut the economy down, or shut the United States down for 30 days, things are going to come back, and since the market is forward-looking by 6 months, stocks are going to rebound." So when he said that, he was actually not short. He was really, really long the market. So there was a little bit of fake news. Again, I'm not being an Ackman apologist. It's kind of what happened. But yeah, I mean, think about what a time that was. Just what a crazy, crazy time. Just insane. Insane stuff. Now, at the time, all of my major customers at the time, because I was in tech sales, all of my major customers were hospitals, home health care agencies, and nursing homes. So you could imagine how crazy business was for me, which was pretty unbelievable, because while everybody was really, really afraid of losing their jobs, I just happened to get really lucky to be selling into an industry that was absolutely booming and exploding, which was selling into healthcare, selling tech and telecom and software into the healthcare sector, specifically hospitals, home healthcare agencies, and nursing homes during COVID-19. It was essentially 8 months of just taking orders. It was nuts. The accounts that I had tripled in size. It was just a wild time. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll never have something like that happen ever again, because that was just hell, honestly. That time was crazy. Hey, what's up, Dean? Right. We're now on the corner of West 4th Street, Christopher and Grove Street. This is where you have the Stonewall Inn. Now, during the summer, they usually close off this street And they have all tables, chairs, outdoor dining here. It's actually really nice here. It's kind of unfortunate you have all this nasty scaffolding covering the entire area here. It's pretty packed. What's up, Brian? Good to see you. Checking out the West Village tonight. Jonathan says, how do you think a rate cut will play into the AI optimism? I don't think there's a correlation there. I don't think there's going to be rate cuts anytime soon. Well, let's just say if there is, right? Let's say if the Fed cuts rates 25 basis points. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think that'll really make a material impact. I think it'll freak people out. I think you'll have an emotional reaction if the Fed says, all right, we're going to cut by 25 basis points, but 25 basis points really isn't anything at all. But I think the reaction to it, in terms of just people's reaction, will be pandemonium and freaking out. So I don't think the Fed's going to do that. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much for your $1 donation. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for your support. Out and about, have you tried any restaurants? Yeah, this one right here, Jeffrey's Grocery. It's okay. It's pretty good. It's a little expensive though, I'd say. Tad expensive. But pretty much everything is in New York City. It's quite expensive. Four, 5, 6 is, I think interest rates will be 3% in 12 months. Or in 3 months? Really? Whoa. I don't know about that. We'll see. It's interesting. Well, I think tomorrow's really, or not tomorrow, next week is really going to be the telltale, because next week we get CPI data out, right? The next consumer price index is going to be Wednesday.
There's something weird.
And I have a feeling it'll probably come in a little bit hotter than expected. Meld says, Tom, did you ever make it to Kava? I did. It's okay. I think it's good. Now here's my only concern with Kava. I feel as if you can't eat that every day. Like at Chipotle, you could easily eat Chipotle every single day. And I don't know if you could eat that style Mediterranean food every day. I'm very bullish on the company. I think it's very scalable. I just don't know if it's as scalable as the Chipotle. I think Chipotle, everybody could eat rice, chicken, and steak every day for lunch. All this other Mediterranean stuff, not too sure. But I kind of laid out an interesting bull thesis for Kava in our most recent newsletter. So if you want to check it out, just check your email. I sent it out to everybody not too long ago. I don't know, let's ask the chat. Anybody here a big fan of Kava? Have you been there before? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Would you be a repeat customer? What do you think? Now we're gonna head down some of these side streets, and these are gonna be really, really beautiful. All these tree-lined streets. It's gonna be a slightly different style architecture of what you're used to seeing, particularly in a place like Midtown Manhattan. Alan says no kava in Kansas. Yeah, they're not even in all 50 states yet, so it's very, very, they're in its infancy and growth. Check the Logic says no, kava is not my favorite. John Sunderland says I like kava but prefer Chipotle and others. I agree with your comment. I think Mexican food is a larger TAM, much larger total addressable market. Gina says I love kava. Des says kava is good from time to time. We have a few in Raleigh. Most all of them are slam packed in Manhattan. But that's the thing, like Chipotle is something you could eat pretty much every day, and it's healthy-ish, right? It's not super, super healthy. It's healthier than eating McDonald's, but there is quite high sodium. From an investment thesis, one of the slight drawdowns of kava could be that it's too healthy, as crazy as that sounds. 3T3 says I like kava. Had the lamb meatball bowl the other day in Largo, Florida. How were the lines? Was it packed? Long lines? Anyway, margins are good. If you want to read our bull thesis on kava, again, this isn't a recommendation to buy the stock. We just kind of write about it. You could scan the QR code on your screen and punch in your email, and it'll drop the link to our Substack. Look at this. It looks like they're totally gut renovating this townhome here. Look at that. That's probably going to turn out amazing. And it's more quieter kind of feel. I feel as if I could live here. It's kind of cool that this is in New York City. What do you guys think? Do you like it down here? I love it. You know, it kind of reminds me of Boston a little bit. Well, there's actually quite a few townhomes for sale. Wow, this one looks fully staged. This is probably something we should see during the day. But look at how amazing that looks. Can you guys see that all right? Look at all those vines, that ivy growing on the facade of that building. It's incredible, isn't it? Louis Chen, this is the village.
Try to be a bartender. Do it again.
It does kind of have a similar feel. I would agree. To some parts of Brooklyn. Wow, guys, check out this row of townhomes here. Look at them. And the good thing about here is you have this nice canopy. So it's not going to be so hot during the summer because these trees provide shade, you know? But look at this. Man. Now, if you guys like townhomes, I actually just listed, or our team just listed, a really, really nice Chelsea townhome on the market. And the interesting thing about it is it's a multifamily property. Oftentimes what you'll see in New York is people acquiring townhomes like this that used to be multifamily. Usually probably 3 or 4 units is the standard, but then they'll buy them and they'll kind of convert them into single family. So if you want to see what it's like on the inside, we could film a little bit of a tour of our new listing. It's a 4-unit multifamily property in Chelsea. We literally just listed it on Friday. There's also a lot of these cool hole-in-the-wall places. Look at this. This looks like a little bit of retail space that's vacant, but it looks quite nice. If you guys are interested in any of our listings, or I should say curious about it, if you type !Thomas in the chat, THOMAS, it'll bring you to our website, and you could look at all of our current listings on the market, and many of which we have the video tours online. This is Bank Street in West 4th. What do you guys think? I like it down here a lot. Hey, Vincent from South Florida. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us as we walk through the village tonight. Okay, let's check out some of these little restaurants. They're closed now, but I'll still kind of show you what they look like. They're very quaint. It's like very kind of cool and hip. Much quieter. It's a cool vibe. Mars says, hey Tom, do you have any listings in Tribeca? Yeah, so we have an amazing listing in Tribeca. The address is 5 Franklin Place. I'll say that again if you want to look it up. 5 Franklin Place, Unit 8A. Now, the great thing about that listing is it's on a private street. So not to be confused with Franklin Street, it's just directly off Franklin, and it's a little alleyway called Franklin Place. So it's completely private to your building, and we are listing Unit 8A. It's a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom apartment. It's on the market for $3,495,000, and the building is spectacular. You have a pool on the roof, you have a children's playroom. Yikes. You have a gym, and you also have a garage in your building. So it's kind of cool. If you want to see the property tour, you can just look up on our YouTube channel, you can see it. But the facade of the building actually opens up. So if you look at some of the photos online of 5 Franklin Place, the building, the facade of the building, if you pull up to it in your car, it'll automatically know you're pulling up to it, and the facade kind of opens up like a transformer. It's very cool. Then you drive your car onto this elevator landing, and then it parks your car for you about 2 stories underground. It is a very, very cool building. So if you want the privacy, if you kind of like, if you're a high profile individual, there's a lot of hockey players that live in there, some news anchors, some notable, like it's very, very private, very bespoke product, very cool building. Relatively new build, 2015, spanning 19 stories, and there's 51 units in the building. So it is bespoke. Morris's is the garage purchase separate. Yeah, so there's only 4 spaces left. It would be a separate sale through the sponsor, and each space is $350,000. And unfortunately, only sedan spaces left. So a sedan, you know, think like a Toyota Corolla, Toyota Camry, something like that. The SUV spaces are taken, unfortunately. We got a mobile gas station here. $4.59 a gallon. Mikey says, hey Tom, have you met Ryan Serhant? I love his content. Yeah, I'm actually going into an event next week where he will be. He's a nice guy. He does a lot of deals with my boss. Look at this. I think this is a Mexican restaurant. Looks pretty good. Art bar.
Dude, TikTok, nice.
Looks like an interesting place. Now, if you've seen that show, that Ryan was on, $1 Million Listing New York, that's the same show that my boss was on. You know, I never noticed this Alec Monopoly drawing there. Kind of reminds me of Wynwood, right? T-Cal. Let's just grab a beer. If you were here, I'd close down the stream right now. I'm down. You know, the more I'm walking around the village, the more I kind of like it. I think I like it better at night. We're about to transition out of it now. Then we'll head back to 34th Street. Holy crap, we've been streaming for 2.5 hours.
And it was easy with the points we had.
Totally lost track of time.
I can't imagine where we'd be without them.
Does anybody know what time it is? Crispy says, Tom, what's your beer of choice? I don't drink beer. Yeah, not a big beer person. Now I would like, you know what I'd like to have? I feel as if I want to start collecting bourbon and wine. I think that'd be kind of cool to have a dedicated room in the house and get really, really granular into collecting bourbon and different wines. Now, the reason why I became interested in this is because I was on an interesting project in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Now, if there's any bourbon drinkers in the chat, Anybody familiar with Widow Jane? The brand, the Widow Jane bourbon. Now, if you are, they're located directly across the street from the building we were selling, right on Condo Street. And we threw this big party, which was awesome, by the way. We may have another one. And the Widow Jane sponsored it. And they did a big, you know, bourbon tasting for everybody. And just the kind of the process of how they make it was so intriguing to me that I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind actually like collecting this stuff. Wow, it's 11:24. Wendy England's bourbon's just too sweet for me. Yeah, I mean, I don't drink, but I feel like this would be cool to have. And apparently they appreciate very well in value. Like wine and select bourbons have outperformed the S&P 500. Joel Pam's Badel Hazen was my favorite. Yeah, Darren's is my brother. Just recently had a liver transplant. Stay away from bourbon. Well, first and foremost, hopefully he's recovering. Please God, sending my prayers to you and your family and your brother. But yeah, generally speaking, alcohol is poison. But I just got so interested in how they make it. I don't drink, but it's very interesting how they make that stuff.
You know what you're talking about.
So I was at this charity event. I think I told you guys about it. The Promise Project. We were doing just a fundraiser this past week, which is a really good cause, by the way. Really, really good cause. The Promise Project essentially raises money for families that don't have enough money to test their kids for, you know, learning issues like dyslexia and the like. Because it can be very, very frustrating. You know, if anybody's, you know, had difficulty when they were young, you know, with reading or concentrating, it can be very difficult, and those tests can be very expensive. Well, this organization will pay for those specific tests. That can be pretty pricey. In any event, they were auctioning off these wine bottles. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll take a look at them. Not because I was going to buy them. I just wanted to, I was curious. Some of these bottles were $200. I think one of them was like $500 for one bottle. I don't get it, but crazy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? $200 for a bottle of wine. $500 for one bottle of wine. That's insane. You can get a bottle of wine for like 20 bucks. I guess it just depends how old it is. You know, the age and all that stuff. But yeah, generally speaking, would like to, I wouldn't even mind maybe buying like or having a part ownership in a vineyard. You know, as like a hobby project. I wouldn't even mind that. I think that'd be kind of cool to do in your spare time. You know, go in just like with a partner later in life and, you know, buy out a vineyard. I think that'd be pretty cool. SoCal Lawrence, since those prices are actually cheap here in LA. Well, the best wine does come from California, is that right? Like Napa Valley. Now, on the topic of alcohol, has anybody heard of the alcohol called mead? I think it's called MEAD, something like that. Well, this was way, way back in the day. I went on an appointment to, remember those two kids that were on that Disney Channel show? The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Does anybody remember that television show? Well, anyway, I was trying to sell one of the brothers this temperature monitoring solution because he owns this company that makes mead in Brooklyn, New York. Anyway, that's the only reason why I know about it. But the process is fascinating, and I wouldn't mind doing it. Just like a hobby. Someone says, we tried tequila ice cream. Now, I got another crazy story about alcohol. Who here is familiar with the brand Leblanc Cachaça? I think that's how you pronounce it. Is anybody familiar with that? Leblanc Cachaça? I think that's how you pronounce the second part. Anyway, I believe it's Brazilian. And way back in the day, this was when I was a teenager, one of my first jobs was washing rental cars for this company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And there was this nice guy that would come in all the time, and I built a relationship with this guy over many years. Really nice guy. And he was telling me about this company he was building, and he's like, yeah, I'm making this company Leblanc, and it's this I forget what it's some type of alcohol. I'm not a fissant in alcohol. And for Christmas, he would give me cases of this Leblanc, and I would give it to my brother. This guy, his name is Steve Lutman. I don't keep in touch too much with him, but sometimes I'll send him an email over the holidays. But he sold that company for a lot of money to, I forget. It's getting late. But if you Google it, you could see the transaction. This guy, Steve Lutman, Stern School of Business graduate, nice guy. I would chat with him quite often when he would come in. I wonder what he's doing now. I think he's working on some other business ventures. Man, could anybody Google the company that they sold to? That's killing me that I can't remember that. Anyway. Check out the Hudson Yards from here. Look at the spire of the Empire. Meld. What was the name brand? It was Leblanc. Leblanc Cachaça. Ah, Bacardi bought it. That's it. Yes, you're correct. That is who bought it. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the kind of people you meet. That's why I always say, you know, if you're a teenager and you're working in the city, and even if you're working, you know, a minimum wage job, you should always put your best foot forward in that job and have a very good attitude and be very curious. Very curious. Because these people that you're servicing in the city, you know, could go on to sell their businesses for hundreds of millions of dollars. I've always said that, you know, if you work at a Starbucks on Park Avenue, you could very, very well be in a gold mine. Because think about those people that are coming in to get their coffee during the morning rush hour. You know, these are all bankers, hedge fund guys, hedge fund girls, private equity, VC. And if you are, let's say, a young guy or young girl, 19, 20 years old, and let's say you're going to college and you're interested in the finance business, well, guess what? You're probably getting more face time with the managing directors and the portfolio managers at these funds than some of the analysts are, right? So if you could do your job to the best of your ability, get to know their names, remember their names, ask great questions, right? Maybe before you go into work, you read an interesting article about what their firm is doing. And you say, hey, John, you know, I just read this interesting article about, you know, this trade that you guys put on. That's really interesting because I also read this article that says that market is expanding. You know, what are your thoughts on that? You develop a relationship, one thing leads to another. From working a minimum wage job at Starbucks, now you're an analyst at a big hedge fund. You know, you need to kind of expand your mind because things like that happen. Things like that happen. The whole reason why I got a start in tech sales is because a person that used to rent cars from this rental car place, who was a vice president at Salesforce, he's like, yeah, you should definitely go into software sales. You should definitely go into telecom sales. Apply here. Do that. So always have that open mind to make the most out of any situation. Hey Sharon, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I think we'll end it here, everybody. This has been a crazy long live stream. I had no idea we're almost going on 2.5 hours. So thanks everybody for joining. Most importantly, happy Mother's Day weekend. Big shout out to all the mothers out there. We appreciate you very much. I think mothers are the bedrock and the foundation of a functioning society. So thank you for all you do, all the moms out there. And we will see you all tomorrow for the markets look ahead live stream. If you're new here, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. If you like these financial conversations, consider subscribing to our newsletter. We send out a conclusive and detailed equity research piece every other Thursday, right as the market closes. If you want to read it for free, you can scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email, and check it out. If you like it, share it with your friends and your family. We'll see you next time. So Brian, appreciate it, marketing, videography, out and about. New England Crypto, Darren, Jenny Trickett, Brian, Western Mass Dave, Sharon, Gary, Roy, Kevin D. See you guys tomorrow. Take care.